The Galactic Empire had conquered 10,000 worlds. But 3 minutes before declaring war on Earth, one alien admiral stood before the entire Imperial Council and said something that made the room go silent. "Do not attack humanity." Nobody laughed. Not yet. Admiral Vale looked around the enormous chamber. Hundreds of alien representatives watched him from elevated platforms. Their species had ruled the galaxy for centuries. Their fleets were larger than entire human nations. Their weapons could crack planetary defenses in minutes. And now Vale was telling them to fear a species that controlled one star. The Emperor leaned forward from his throne. "Explain yourself." Vale activated the central hologram. Earth appeared above the council. Blue oceans. Green continents. One small moon. "That is humanity," Vale said. A representative from the military council smiled. "One planet." Vale nodded. "Correct. Primitive technology? Compared with ours, yes. Small military? Yes." The representative laughed. "So why are we wasting time discussing them?" Vale looked at him. "Because we don't understand them." The laughter disappeared. Vale changed the display. Hundreds of reconnaissance reports appeared. Human military bases, orbital stations, research facilities, communication networks. Then the reports began turning red. "Over the last 14 months, we sent reconnaissance probes into human territory." The Emperor narrowed his eyes. "How many returned?" "None." The chamber became quiet. "Destroyed?" "We don't know." The Emperor stared at him. "You don't know?" Vale shook his head. "They disappeared without transmitting distress signals." Another council member stood. "Then increase the probe fleet." "We did." "And?" "Same result." The Emperor slowly rose from his throne. "What are you suggesting?" Vale hesitated. Then he said it. "I am suggesting we leave humanity alone." Someone finally laughed. Then another. Within seconds, the entire chamber erupted. Vale didn't move. He had expected it. The Emperor raised one hand. The room became silent. "You believe one primitive species can threaten the Galactic Empire?" "No." Vale looked directly at him. "I believe the Galactic Empire could destroy humanity." The Emperor smiled. "Then we agree." "No." Vale's voice became harder. "I believe humanity could make destroying them so expensive that the Empire destroys itself trying." That ended the laughter. The Emperor stared at him. "Based on what?" Vale changed the display one final time. A human woman appeared. She stood inside a simple room. No military decorations. No intimidating weapons. No giant fleet behind her. Just a tired face and steady eyes. "My name is Commander Alina Ward." The recording continued. "We know you're watching us." Several council members exchanged glances. Alina continued. "We know where your reconnaissance ships are." Vale watched the Emperor carefully. "We know where your invasion fleet is assembling." The Emperor's expression changed. Alina leaned slightly toward the camera. "And we know what you're planning." Silence. Then came the sentence that would later become famous across the galaxy. "So I'm going to give you one chance." She paused. "Don't attack humanity." The recording ended. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then the Emperor laughed. Not loudly. Almost calmly. He turned toward his military commander. "How many ships are ready?" 400 battleships. Troops? 20 million. Weapons? All operational. The Emperor looked at Vale. "Admiral, prepare the invasion." Vale didn't salute. "My Emperor, reconsider." "Why?" "Because they aren't afraid." The Emperor smiled. "Fear is irrelevant when the enemy is outmatched." Vale looked back at the image of Earth. "No." He spoke quietly. "Fear is exactly what worries me." The Emperor dismissed him. 6 hours later, the largest invasion fleet in Imperial history entered hyperspace. 400 battleships, 20,000 fighters, 3 planetary siege platforms, and the Empire's most devastating weapon, the Oblivion Lance. Vale remained aboard the flagship. He watched the stars stretch into lines as the fleet accelerated toward Earth. Then something strange happened. A communication appeared on his private terminal. No sender. No encryption signature. Just 7 words. He stared at them. Then his face went pale. The message read, ****, you were warned. We remember everything. ****. Vale immediately tried to trace the signal. Nothing. It had already disappeared. Hours later, the Imperial fleet emerged above Earth's outer system. The bridge crew waited for alarms. There were none. No emergency transmissions. No human fleet. No evacuation. Nothing. Earth simply hung beneath them. Beautiful. Silent. Defenseless. The Imperial commander smiled. Begin planetary assault. The Oblivion Lance began charging. Then every Imperial ship received the same signal. The lights on the bridge flickered. Navigation systems failed. Hundreds of screens went black. The commander shouted for his technicians. What is happening? Nobody answered. Vale slowly turned toward the observation window. Something had appeared behind the fleet. It wasn't a human battleship. It wasn't a weapon. It was enormous. A structure larger than a city. A perfect circular gateway floating in the darkness. And it was opening. Vale stared at it in horror. Because he suddenly understood something. Humanity hadn't been waiting for the Empire to arrive. They had been waiting for the Empire to bring them something. And now they had. The gateway opened completely. Something moved inside. Vale whispered the only words he could think of. We should have listened. Then every light in the Imperial fleet went out. The gateway opened. Nothing came through. For 5 seconds, the Imperial fleet waited in silence. 10 seconds. 20. The Imperial commander finally laughed. Is this their great weapon? Admiral Vale didn't answer. He was still staring at the gateway. Something was wrong. The structure wasn't moving. It wasn't attacking. It wasn't even targeting them. It was simply there. Then the commander received a transmission. Sir. What? We've detected another signal. From the gateway? No. The technician looked confused. From our own ships. The commander turned toward him. What does that mean? Before the technician could answer, thousands of tiny lights appeared across the tactical display. One inside every Imperial vessel. The commander stared. Identify them. The technician's hands moved rapidly across the console. I can't. Destroy them. We can't. Why? They aren't physical objects. Vale stepped forward. Then what are they? The technician swallowed. Data. The entire bridge went silent. The lights began moving across the tactical display. Not randomly. They were following the Imperial fleet's internal communication network. Navigation. Weapons. Sensors. Engine controls. The human signal was moving through everything. The commander shouted, seal the network. Too late. Every screen on the bridge went black. Then one screen came back. A human woman appeared. Commander Elena Ward. Her expression was calm. Almost annoyingly calm. You came. The Imperial commander stared at her. You attacked our fleet. Elena shook her head. No. You disabled our systems. No. You infiltrated our ships. No. The commander pointed toward the screen. Then what did you do? Elena looked directly into the camera. We opened a door. The transmission ended. The lights returned. Every Imperial system came back online. The commander stared at his instruments. Everything was functioning perfectly. That frightened him more than the shutdown. Admiral? Vale didn't answer. He understood what the humans had done. They had entered the fleet. and then deliberately left. They wanted us to know they could, he whispered. The commander turned. Then we'll show them what happens when they make a mistake. He gave the order. Launch all fighters. Thousands of Imperial fighters surged forward. The human gateway remained motionless. Then Earth appeared on the tactical display. Blue. Quiet. Almost peaceful. The commander smiled. Begin planetary assault. The first weapons charge. Vale stepped toward him. Wait. The commander ignored him. Fire. Nothing happened. The commander looked at his controls. Again. Nothing. What's wrong? The weapons officer stared at his console. They're receiving the firing command. Then fire. They're refusing. The commander froze. Refusing? The weapons officer nodded. Every ship is reporting the same problem. Vale slowly closed his eyes. The humans had done it again. They hadn't destroyed the weapons. They had made the fleet question its own orders. Then the Imperial flagship received a new transmission. Not from Alina. From Earth. A simple map appeared. The commander studied it. It showed the entire Imperial fleet. Every ship. Every fighter. Every formation. Then something appeared in red. The human transmission highlighted the fleet's weakest point. The commander stared. They're showing us where to attack. Vale whispered. No. The commander looked at him. What? They're showing us where they want us to attack. The commander smiled. Then we'll surprise them. He ordered the fleet to split. Half the ships would approach Earth from above. The others would circle behind the planet. The human defense network did nothing. No missiles. No fighters. No warnings. The commander grew confident. See? He looked at Vale. They are afraid. Vale watched the tactical display. No. What? They're waiting. The fleet moved deeper into Earth's orbital zone. Then the first Imperial ship disappeared. The commander frowned. What happened? Another vanish. Then 3. Then 7. No explosions. No debris. Nothing. Their sensor showed empty space. The commander ordered a full scan. The result was impossible. The missing ships were still transmitting. Their positions were unchanged. But visually, they were gone. Cloaking technology? Bale shook his head. Humans don't have that technology. The commander stared at the screen. They don't need it. A technician suddenly shouted. Sir. What? We're detecting gravitational distortions. Where? Everywhere. The stars around the fleet began shifting. Not physically. The Imperial navigation systems were being manipulated. The fleet wasn't surrounded by enemy ships. It was surrounded by false space. Every direction looked identical. Every coordinate appeared valid. Every sensor reported something different. The Empire's greatest weapon had become its greatest weakness. Its size. 400 ships. Thousands of fighters. Millions of soldiers. All trying to navigate through a battlefield where nobody knew where anything was. The commander shouted orders. Recall the fleet. Nothing happened. Why aren't they responding? The communications officer looks terrified. Because they can't hear us. The commander turned. What? Our fleet network is divided. How? We don't know. Vale looked at the tactical display. He finally understood. The humans weren't attacking the Imperial fleet. They were separating it. One squadron believed it was moving toward Earth. Another believed it was moving toward the flagship. A third believed it was retreating. None of them were moving where they thought they were. Then the human ships appeared. 27. Only 27. They emerged from the false navigation field like ghosts. The Imperial commander laughed. 27 ships. Vale looked at him. Don't underestimate them again. The human vessels didn't attack. They simply moved between Imperial formations. One passed beneath a battleship. Another crossed between two cruisers. Another disappeared behind a fighter squadron. Then all 27 vanish. The commander stare. Where did they go? A technician answer. Everywhere. The commander turned sharply. What? They aren't transmitting from one location. The tactical screen change. 27 human ships appeared across the entire Imperial formation. Impossible distances apart. Vale finally understood. The Gateway hadn't brought an army. It had brought information. Humanity had learned how the Empire communicated, how it navigated, how it predicted movement, how it organized its fleet. The Gateway was never a weapon. It was a doorway for information. And humanity had used the Empire's own network to understand it from the inside. Then the first Imperial ship lost power. Then another. Then another. Not destroyed. Disable. The human fleet had found the exact systems needed to stop the ships without killing their crews. One by one, Imperial battleships drifted silently through space. The commander watched his fleet become helpless. How many? The technician's voice shook. 386 ships have lost primary navigation. The commander looked at Vale. How? Vale didn't answer immediately. Then he said, because we brought 400 ships to fight one planet. He looks toward Earth. And they brought one planet to fight 400 ships. The commander refused to accept it. Continue the attack. Vale grabbed his arm. Stop. The commander shoved him away. You warned us before? Yes. And you were wrong. Vale stared at him. No. The commander froze. Vale pointed toward the tactical display. I was wrong about one thing. What? I thought humanity would try to destroy us. He looked at the disabled fleet. They're trying to teach us. The commander stared at him. Then a final human transmission appeared. Elena Wart. You still have a choice. The commander laughed bitterly. We don't negotiate with inferior species. Elena's expression didn't change. Then this is not a negotiation. What is it? A demonstration. The transmission ended. Every disabled Imperial ship suddenly regained power. Navigation return. Weapons return. Communications return. Nothing had been damaged. The entire fleet was free. The commander stared at the screen. Why would they release us? Vale already knew. Because they want survivors. The commander looked at him. Why? So we can tell the Empire what happened. Hours later, the Imperial fleet retreated. 41 ships made it home. The rest were still drifting through the outer system, their crews alive and unharmed. The Empire had lost almost an entire invasion fleet. But humanity hadn't destroyed it. That was what terrified Vale. Because destruction would have been understandable. This wasn't. The humans had deliberately shown them that they could dismantle the Empire's greatest military formation without massacring its soldiers. And then they had let the survivors leave. When the flagship finally emerged above Vera Prime, the Emperor was waiting. He looked at the damaged fleet outside the observation window. How many survived? The commander lowered his head. 41. The Emperor's face hardened. Out of 400. Silence. Then the Emperor turned toward Vale. You told me not to attack them. Yes. You knew this would happen? Vale looked at Earth on the distant holographic display. No. The Emperor frowned. Then what do you know? Vale slowly answered. I know we haven't seen their real military yet. The Emperor stared at him. What makes you think that? Vale looked at the 41 surviving ships. Because they never fired a single shot. The Emperor's expression changed. For the first time, he looked afraid. Then that fear turned into anger. Prepare the second fleet. Vale stepped forward. My Emperor, no. The Emperor turned. This time we won't attack their ships. He activated a galactic map. Hundreds of worlds appear. Human allies, trade partners, neutral civilizations. The Emperor selected them one by one. We will attack everything humanity cares about. Vale's face went pale. The Emperor smiled. If they refuse to surrender. He looks toward Earth. We will make them choose who survives. And somewhere on Earth, Alina Ward received the transmission. She read it once. Then again. Her expression finally changed. Not fear. Not anger. Something colder. She turned toward her officers. Begin Phase 3. The room became silent. One officer asked the question nobody wanted to ask. What is Phase 3? Elena looked at the map of the galaxy. We stopped defending ourselves. She touched the Imperial capital. We start taking away the Empire's ability to make war. Then she looked toward the stars. And we do it without becoming them. The Empire did not attack Earth again. Instead, it attacked everything around it. For the next 72 hours, Imperial fleets moved through the galaxy like a storm. They struck human trade routes. They intercepted supply ships. They occupied neutral stations. They pressured neighboring civilizations to cut diplomatic ties with Earth. The message was always the same. *** abandon humanity, or become its enemy. ***. The Emperor believed he had finally found humanity's weakness. Humanity needed allies. So he would remove them. One world at a time. On Earth, Commander Alina Ward watched the map change. Red symbols spread across the galaxy. An Imperial fleet had seized the Helios trade corridor. Another had surrounded the planet Gastara. A third had cut the only safe route between Earth and 6 allied worlds. Her officers waited for her reaction. Elena said nothing. She simply studied the map. One of her commanders finally spoke. They're trying to isolate us. I know. They've already cut 3 major supply routes. I know. We should reinforce the remaining corridors. Elena looked at him. No. He frowned. No. Let them take them. The room went silent. The commander stared at the map. If we let the Empire control those routes, we'll lose access to critical resources. Elena nodded. Exactly. Nobody understood. Then Elena touched the holographic map. Big Imperial supply routes appeared. Long lines connected dozens of worlds. She enlarged them. Look at this. The officers gathered around. Every Imperial fleet currently operating near our territory is being supplied through these corridors. One officer nodded. Yes. Elena moved her hand. The Imperial routes became isolated from one another. Now imagine what happens if those corridors stop being useful. The officer looked confused. How do we stop them? Elena smiled faintly. We don't. She pointed toward the surrounding worlds. They will. 3 days later, the first Imperial supply convoy arrived at the planet Orin. The planet's governor greeted the Imperial commander personally. Welcome, General. The general nodded. Your world has been ordered to provide fuel and food for the fleet. We will comply. Good. The general turned toward his officers. Begin unloading. The governor smiled. But there was something strange about that smile. The Empire didn't notice. The supplies were loaded. The fleet departed. 6 hours later, the Imperial ships began reporting engine problems. Then navigation errors. Then communication delays. The general demanded an explanation. His engineers couldn't find one. Every system appeared normal. The fleet continued. Then the first ship dropped out of formation. Its engines were functioning. Its navigation was functioning. Its crew was functioning. But the ship couldn't move. The general shouted at the engineers. Fix it. We're trying. What did Orin do? The engineers shook their heads. Nothing. The general stared at the planet behind them. Then another ship stopped. Then another. Within an hour, half the convoy was drifting through space. The Empire had checked the fuel. The fuel was genuine. It had checked the engines. The engines were intact. It had checked the navigation systems. Nothing was wrong. Finally, a technician discovered the problem. The new fuel mixture was perfectly compatible with Imperial engines. But it caused microscopic delays in energy transfer. A fraction of a second. Then another. Then another. Nothing dangerous. Nothing that would trigger an alarm. But after thousands of engine cycles, the ships began losing efficiency. The Empire had been sabotaged. Not by soldiers. Not by missiles. By engineers. And Orin wasn't the only world doing it. Across the galaxy, Imperial fleets began experiencing similar problems. Fuel shipments arrived late. Replacement parts were subtly redesigned. Navigation beacons developed tiny timing errors. Food supplies were redirected through longer routes. Communication relays became unreliable. Nothing was catastrophic. That was the genius of it. The Empire couldn't point to a single attack. There was no enemy fleet to destroy. No military base to capture. No obvious battlefield. There were only thousands of tiny failures. And every one of them looked accidental. The Emperor became furious. Find the saboteurs. His intelligence chief lowered his head. We have arrested 300 suspects. And none of them knew anything. The Emperor stared at him. Then arrest 3,000. The intelligence chief hesitated. Your Majesty. What? We believe the sabotage is coming from entire populations. The Emperor froze. What? They aren't following one organization. Then how are they coordinating? We don't know. The Emperor slammed his hand against the console. Find out. The intelligence chief bowed. But he already knew the truth. There was nothing to find. Humanity wasn't commanding the rebellion. Humanity had simply given the galaxy a reason to resist. A message had been spreading across Imperial territory. It wasn't a military order. It wasn't a revolutionary manifesto. It was one sentence. Asterisk asterisk, you don't have to fight them. Just stop helping them. Asterisk asterisk. That sentence changed everything. On the planet Vera, an Imperial fuel worker quietly refused to alter a shipment. On another world, a factory stopped producing military components. On another, a communications officer delayed a fleet transmission by 6 minutes. 6 minutes. Nothing more. But 6 minutes was enough for an entire convoy to miss its hyperspace window. The Empire called it treason. The people called it refusal. And the difference mattered. Because treason could be punished. Refusal could spread. Within weeks, Imperial control began weakening. The Emperor responded with fear. He sent soldiers into civilian cities. He threatened governors. He replaced local leaders with military commanders. The more pressure he applied, the more resistance appeared. Elena watched everything from Earth. Her officers expected her to celebrate. She didn't. One evening, her deputy found her alone in the command room. You're worried. Elena didn't look away from the map. Yes. Why? Because we're winning too easily. He frowned. Too easily? Every victory has a price. She pointed toward the galaxy. Look at those worlds. Millions of civilians were caught between Imperial demands and human pressure. Some were refusing the Empire. Others were terrified of what would happen if they did. We started this war because we wanted to protect Earth, Elena said. Her deputy nodded. Now we're responsible for everyone caught inside it. She looked exhausted. We can't become another empire while trying to defeat one. The deputy was silent. Then an alarm sounded. A new Imperial fleet had entered the system. But this fleet was different. No attack formation. No weapons charge. No fighter squadrons. Instead, thousands of civilian transports followed behind it. Elena's expression hardened. What are those? Her officer checked the data. Refugee ships. How many? Approximately 12 million civilians. Elena stared at the display. The Imperial fleet had placed civilians between itself and the human defense network. The Emperor had found a new weapon. Not ships. People. A transmission appeared. The Emperor himself. His face filled the command room. You wanted the galaxy to choose. Elena said nothing. You told them they could refuse my orders. He smiled. Now you can choose. The refugee fleet moved closer to Earth. The Emperor continued. These civilians are citizens of the Empire. Elena's eyes narrowed. If you attack us, millions die. You know we won't attack them. The Emperor smiled. That is why they are useful. The transmission ended. Her officers looked toward her. What do we do? Elena stared at the approaching fleet. Open the evacuation corridors. The officer hesitated. All of them? All. But the Imperial fleet will follow. I know. They could enter Earth's defensive perimeter. I know. He looked at her. Commander, this could be a trap. Elena nodded. It is. She turned toward the main tactical display. And we're going to let them walk into it. The refugee fleet entered Earth's outer system. The Imperial warships followed. They expected human defenses to activate. Instead, the human fleet pulled back. The Imperial commander smiled. Earth is surrendering. His officers cheered. The fleet advanced. Then something strange appeared on their sensors. Not human ships. Civilian ships. Thousands of them. The refugee transports were broadcasting their locations across every Imperial communication channel. The Imperial commander frowned. Why are they doing that? A technician looked confused. They're transmitting their identities. Why? The answer arrived from Earth. Elena Ward. Because we asked them to. The commander stared at the screen. Elena continued. Your Emperor said these people belong to the Empire. She looked at the refugee fleet. They do. Then she looked directly into the camera. So we're going to protect them. The Imperial commander laughed. You can't protect 12 million people. Elena smiled. No. She touched the tactical display. We can protect 12 million people. The entire human network activated. Not weapons. Ships. Medical vessels. Cargo carriers. Emergency transport. Mining ships. Civilian freighters. Even private spacecraft. Thousands of human vessels emerged from Earth's orbital stations. They surrounded the refugee fleet. Not as a military formation. As a shield. The Imperial commander stared. There were no weapons aimed at him. No missiles. No attack ships. Just thousands of human vessels forming a protective corridor. The refugees began moving through it. The Imperial fleet could have fired. But every shot would hit civilians. The Emperor had created the trap. Humanity had turned it into a rescue operation. One by one, the refugee ships passed safely through the corridor. The Imperial fleet remained frozen. Then an Imperial officer spoke quietly. Sir. What? Our crews are refusing to fire. The commander turned. Order them. They won't. Why? The officer looked toward the human ships. Because their families are on those worlds too. The commander understood. The Empire had spent centuries convincing its citizens that obedience was strength. Humanity had shown them something else. Choice. Then the Imperial fleet began retreating. Not because humanity had defeated it. Because its soldiers no longer believed the war was worth fighting. The news reached the Emperor. He stood motionless as the report finished. How many civilians did humanity rescue? 12 million. And our fleet? Intact. The Emperor looked confused. They didn't attack? No. Why? The officer hesitated. They said they weren't fighting the people of the Empire. The Emperor slowly sat down. For the first time, he understood the danger. Humanity wasn't trying to destroy his civilization. It was separating his civilization from him. He immediately ordered a new strategy. No more attacks on supply routes. The generals looked surprised. Then what do we target? The Emperor looked at the map. His finger moved toward one location. Earth? We don't need to defeat humanity. He smiled. We only need to make them afraid. Far away, Elena received the message. She read it. Then she looked at the map. The Imperial fleet was gathering again. But this time, something else was happening. A new signal was spreading across Imperial space. Not from Earth. Not from any rebel world. From inside the Empire itself. Elena opened the transmission. A voice spoke. We have been watching humanity. The voice belonged to an Imperial officer. We know what your Emperor is planning. A pause. And we know where his most important weapons are hidden. Elena's eyes narrowed. Who are you? The answer came quietly. Someone who has finally understood your warning. The transmission ended. Elena looked at her officers. Nobody spoke. Then she smiled. Not because the war was over. Because the Empire had just made its biggest mistake. It had given humanity an enemy from the inside. And this time, humanity wasn't going to defend itself. It was going hunting. Chapter 4. The Betrayal. The first Imperial message reached Earth at 3:17. It contained no threat. No demand. No declaration of war. Just coordinates. Commander Elena Ward stared at the transmission. Verify the source. Her communications officer checked it twice. Imperial encryption. Authentic? Yes. Who sent it? The officer hesitated. We don't know. Elena looked at the coordinates. They pointed toward the Imperial capital. Not a military base. Not a fleet. The heart of the Empire. Open it. The screen came alive. A pale blue alien appeared. His face was tired. His uniform carried the insignia of an Imperial admiral. Elena recognized him immediately. Admiral Vale. Vale looked directly into the camera. I told them not to attack you. Elena said nothing. I told the Emperor that humanity was different. His expression hardened. He called me a coward. Elena finally spoke. Why are you contacting us? Vale looked around before answering. Because the Emperor has made a mistake. What mistake? He believes you are trying to destroy the Empire. Elena's eyes narrowed. We're not. I know. Vale leaned closer. That is why I'm contacting you. He transmitted a file. Elena opened it. The holographic map changed. Hundreds of Imperial worlds appeared. Then several disappeared. Not destroyed. Disconnected. Vale continued. The Emperor is preparing something called the Ascension Protocol. Elena frowned. What is that? A command system. That doesn't sound dangerous. It is. Vale's expression became grim. The Empire was built around centralized control. Every fleet, every military station, every major weapons platform ultimately answers to the Imperial command network. Elena understood. He wants to control everything directly. Yes. Why? Because he no longer trusts his own people. Vale transmitted another file. A massive structure appeared. It surrounded a star. Elena stared. What is that? The crown. Her officers gathered around the display. Vale continued. It was built 200 years ago. For what? Total communication control. Elena studied the structure. How powerful? Vale looked at her. If activated, every Imperial ship, station, weapons platform, and military network will obey a single command source. Elena's expression changed. The Emperor. Yes. Her deputy looked at her. Then he could force every remaining fleet to fight. Vale nodded. Even if the crews refuse. Elena turned back toward the transmission. Where is the crown? Vale gave her another set of coordinates. The location appeared. Not near the capital. Not near Earth. Far outside the Central Empire. A forgotten region of space. Elena stared at it. Why would he build it there? Because nobody was supposed to know it existed. Who knows? Vale hesitated. Now, you. And you. Elena looked at him. Why trust us? Vale smiled sadly. I don't. He paused. I trust what you're trying to do. The transmission ended. The room remained silent. Elena looked at her officers. We have a problem. Her deputy nodded. The crown. No. She pointed toward the screen. Vale. The deputy frowned. You think he's lying? I think he's telling us exactly what he wants us to know. She studied the coordinates again. The question is why? Before anyone could answer, another alarm sounded. An Imperial fleet had entered the outer system. But this fleet was unlike the others. It wasn't attacking. It was waiting. A communication request appeared. Elena accepted it. A new Imperial commander appeared. You are Commander Ward? Yes. I am General Sarek. What do you want? To negotiate. Elena almost laughed. You've never wanted to negotiate before. That was before. Before what? Sarek looked uncomfortable. Before we learned what the Emperor was planning. Elena stared at him. Another Imperial defection. Then another transmission arrived. Then another. Within minutes, 11 Imperial commanders were requesting communication. All of them had the same message. The Emperor had lost control. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. She had wanted the Empire divided. She had wanted its people to choose. But now the division was happening faster than anyone expected. And divided empires were dangerous, especially when desperate. Elena opened a secure channel with General Sarek. How many fleets are still loyal to the Emperor? Approximately 40%. And the rest? Waiting. For what? Sarek looked at her. For someone to tell them what to do. Elena closed her eyes for a moment. That was the danger. Humanity had spent months teaching the galaxy to stop obeying. Now millions of soldiers were waiting for a new authority. If humanity stepped into that role, it would become exactly what it had fought. Elena opened the channel again. Tell your fleets to stand down. Sarek looked surprised. What? Stand down. You want us to surrender? No. She paused. I want you to stop asking us for orders. Sarek stared at her. Then who commands us? Nobody. The Imperial General didn't understand. You can't mean that. I do. Elena looked directly into the camera. You don't need a new emperor. You don't need a human commander. You need to decide what your worlds become. Sarek was silent. Then he lowered his head. Understood. The channel closed. Her deputy looked at her. That could work. Elena shook her head. Or it could create chaos. Before he could answer, the entire room went dark. Every holographic display disappeared. The command network went silent. Then one screen activated. The Emperor appeared. His face was calm. Too calm? You have been very busy, Commander Ward. Elena stepped toward the screen. So have you. The Emperor smiled. You have turned my people against me. No. You have destroyed my fleets. No. You have broken my empire. Elena shook her head. You did that. The Emperor's smile disappeared. Then watch what I do next. The screen changed. A massive Imperial fleet appeared. Thousands of ships. Not surrounding Earth. Surrounding the Imperial capital. Elena stared. What are they doing? The Emperor answered. Waiting. For what? For the crown. The screen changed again. The hidden structure appeared around a distant star. Power began flowing through it. One by one, Imperial ships across the galaxy responded. Their navigation systems activated. Their weapons systems synchronized. Their command networks connected. The crown was coming online. Elena's deputy whispered. He's linking the entire military. Elena watched the map. Thousands of ships. Millions of soldiers. Every military installation in the Empire. All connected. Then something unexpected happened. One Imperial fleet disappeared from the network. Then another. Then another. The Emperor's expression changed. What is happening? His technicians shouted. Multiple command nodes are refusing synchronization. Override them. We can't. Why? They've disconnected themselves. The Emperor looked furious. Then another fleet disconnected. Then another. Across the galaxy, Imperial commanders were cutting themselves out of the Crown's network. They were refusing to become the Emperor's weapon. Elena smiled. But only for a moment. Because the Crown continued charging. Even without every fleet. Enough remain. Vale's warning suddenly made sense. The Crown didn't need complete control. It only needed enough. The Emperor appeared again. You see? He looked directly at Elena. This is why your rebellion was meaningless. You can convince soldiers to stop obeying. He smiled. But you cannot convince machines. Elena looked at the Crown. The machine was enormous. Beautiful. Terrifying. And almost fully powered. She turned to her engineers. Can we shut it down? The chief engineer shook his head. Not from here. Can we reach it? Not before activation. How long? He checked the data. 23 minutes. Elena looked around the room. Then we have 23 minutes. Her deputy stepped forward. With what fleet? Elena smiled. We don't need a fleet. She opened a communication channel. Every human vessel in the system received her message. So did every civilian ship. Elena spoke calmly. We are going to the Crown. Her deputy stared at her. Commander, that station is surrounded by the largest concentration of Imperial ships we've ever seen. I know. We'll never get through. Elena looked at him. We don't need to get through. She pointed toward the refugee network. Remember what we learned. He frowned. What? The Empire built everything around one assumption. That everyone follows orders. Elena activated the galaxy map. Thousands of civilian ships appeared. Freighters. Mining vessels. Medical ships. Transport craft. Research stations. Private spacecraft. All moving toward the same region. Her deputy stared. You want civilians to enter the battlefield? No. Elena shook her head. I want the Empire to remember who those civilians are. Across the galaxy, the civilian fleet began transmitting. Not threats. Not military commands. Names. Family. Children. Home worlds. Millions of individual identities. The Imperial soldiers received them all. A fighter pilot saw the name of his home city. A battleship captain saw the message from his daughter. A communications officer saw a photograph of his family. The Crown continued charging. But Imperial ships began dropping out. 1. Then 10. Then hundreds. The Emperor screamed at his commanders. Return to formation. Nobody answered. He activated emergency control. The Crown attempted to force synchronization. For several seconds, it worked. Then something unexpected happened. The Crown received a command. Not from the Emperor. Not from humanity. From its own military network. A simple instruction. Disconnect. The system rejected it. Then another command arrived. Disconnect. Then thousands. Millions. Across the galaxy, Imperial ships were sending the same instruction. The Crown began struggling under the impossible volume. Its systems overloaded. Its power grid flickered. The Emperor stared in disbelief. What have you done? Elena watched from Earth. Nothing. The Emperor shouted. You did this. No. She looked at the thousands of civilian transmissions. They did. The Crown began shutting down. The Emperor desperately tried to override it. Activate the failsafe. His technician froze. There is no failsafe. The Emperor turned. There must be. The technician lowered his head. Your predecessors removed it. Why? Because they feared someone like you. Silence. The crown powered down. Across the galaxy, Imperial ships became independent again. The Emperor stared at the dead network. His greatest weapon was gone. But Alina wasn't celebrating. Because Vale's original coordinates were still on her display. She looked at the hidden star. Something didn't make sense. The crown had been real. The betrayal had been real. The civilian resistance had been real. But someone had known exactly how the crown worked. Someone had known where its weaknesses were. Someone had known which Imperial commanders would refuse. Alina opened the original transmission from Vale. She replayed it. Then she noticed something she had missed. In the background, behind Vale was a window. Outside that window was a star. A very specific star. Alina froze. Zoom in. The image enlarged. The star matched the coordinates of the crown. Her deputy looked at her. Vale was there. Alina nodded. He wasn't sending us information. What was he doing? Alina looked toward the stars. He was inside the crown. Then a final message appeared on the screen. From Vale. If you were seeing this, the crown has failed. A second line appeared. But that was never my real plan. Alina's face hardened. A third line appeared. The Emperor isn't the one you should fear. The message ended. Alina stared at the empty screen. For the first time since the war began, she felt genuine uncertainty. Because if Vale had been planning something beyond the Emperor, then humanity hadn't been fighting one enemy. It had been walking into someone else's plan. And somewhere deep inside the Empire, something had just awakened. The first thing Alina saw was Earth. The second was the message waiting above it. The crown was only the beginning. She stared at the words. Trace it. Her communications officer began working. It's coming from the Imperial capital. Phil? No. Then who? The officer looked up. We don't know. Alina felt the same cold sensation she had felt when Vale first contacted her. Someone was moving pieces across the board. And humanity was not the only player. She ordered every defensive network around Earth to activate. Not weapons. Sensors. Every satellite. Every observation station. Every civilian telescope. The entire planet began scanning the stars. Minutes later, something appeared. A fleet. Not Imperial. Not human. It was moving through the outer edge of the galaxy. Thousands of ships. Silent. Perfectly organized. And heading toward the Imperial capital. Her deputy stared at the display. Who are they? Alina shook her head. I don't know. Then the fleet stopped. Every ship turned simultaneously. Toward Earth. The room became silent. They know we're watching. Alina nodded. Apparently. A transmission appeared. No face. No voice. Just a symbol. A circle surrounding 3 vertical lines. The symbol appeared on every human display. Then a voice spoke. You have demonstrated that the Empire can be defeated. Alina, listen. You have demonstrated that its people can be divided. The voice continued. You have demonstrated that its military can be neutralized. A pause. But you have not demonstrated that humanity can protect the galaxy. Alina stepped closer. Who are you? The voice answered. We are the observers. Her deputy whispered. Observers of what? The answer came immediately. Civilizations. The transmission ended. The unidentified fleet began moving again. Straight toward the Imperial capital. Alina understood. They weren't attacking humanity. They were waiting to see what humanity would do. She opened a channel to every surviving Imperial commander. This is Commander Alina Ward. Her message reached thousands of ships. You are about to face an unknown force. Silence. I am not asking you to fight for humanity. Another pause. I am asking you to protect your worlds. One Imperial commander responded. Will you help us? Elena looked at the galaxy map. Yes. The commander hesitated. Why? Because they're your worlds. The answer spread across the Imperial network. For the first time, humans and former Imperial forces began coordinating without a central authority. The Imperial fleets positioned themselves around civilian systems. Human ships joined them. No one gave orders. They simply shared information. For several hours, nothing happened. Then the unknown fleet arrived. The star seemed to disappear behind it. Millions of vessels emerged from hyperspace. Not one formation. Hundreds. Thousands. Each one shaped differently. Some were enormous carriers. Others were thin, almost invisible vessels. Some looked like floating cities. The observers had been watching the galaxy for centuries. Now they had decided to intervene. The Imperial capital prepared for attack. The Emperor stood inside the command chamber. He watched the approaching fleet activate the remaining weapons. His generals looked at one another. We don't have enough power. Then use the planetary grid. That will damage the capital. I said use it. The grid activated. Across the capital, enormous energy structures rose from the surface. The Emperor smiled. Then his main screen went dark. He turned. What happened? A technician stared at the console. The planetary grid has been disconnected. By whom? The technician looks terrified. Your own engineers. The Emperor froze. Again. His own people. The pattern was repeating. He turned toward the window. Outside, human ships were arriving. Not attacking. Positioning themselves around civilian areas. The Emperor opened a channel. Elena appeared. You. Yes. You brought them here. No. You knew they were coming. No. The Emperor laughed. You expect me to believe that? Elena looked at him. I didn't know. For once she was telling the truth. The Emperor studied her. Then why are you helping us? Elena answered without hesitation. Because I won't let another civilization decide who deserves to survive. The Emperor looked away. For the first time, he seemed uncertain. Then the observer fleet moved. No weapons fired. Instead, thousands of small vessels separated from the main formation. They spread across the galaxy. One group approached an Imperial colony. Another approached a human research station. Another approached a neutral world. They weren't attacking. They were scanning. Studying. Testing. Elena watched the pattern. They're measuring us. Her deputy frowned. For what? She didn't answer. Then the observers transmitted again. This time, every civilization received the same message. We have watched your species for 1,000 years. We watched the Empire conquer. We watched humanity resist. We watched worlds obey. We watched worlds refuse. You believe this war is about Earth. Elena's eyes narrowed. It isn't. The voice continued. It is about whether your galaxy is capable of surviving without a ruler. Silence. Then came the final sentence. If your civilizations choose another empire, we will leave you to it. But if you choose cooperation, we will reveal why the empire was never allowed to expand beyond the outer galaxy. The transmission ended. Nobody spoke. Elena looked at Vale's coordinates. The hidden star. The crown. The warning. Everything suddenly connected. The empire hadn't been the first civilization to build a galactic empire. It had simply been the latest. And something had stopped every previous one. The observers. The deputy looked at her. So the empire knew about them? Elena shook her head. Maybe not. Then who did? She looked at Vale's final message. The people who built the crown. They searched the imperial archives. Most records had been erased. But one ancient file survived. It was more than 900 years old. Elena opened it. A historical recording appeared. An elderly imperial scientist stood inside a laboratory. "We have discovered something beyond our borders." Behind him was the same symbol used by the observers. The scientist continued. "They are not an empire. They are not a military. They are a test." The recording flickered. "We attempted to communicate." The scientist looked terrified. "They asked us one question." The recording ended. Elena stared. "What question?" Her engineer restored the damaged section. The recording returned. The scientist whispered, "If you gained absolute power, what would you do with it?" The room went silent. Elena understood. The observers weren't interested in who had the strongest fleet. They were interested in what civilizations did with power. The empire had failed, but humanity had not been tested yet. Her deputy looked at the screen. "What do we tell them?" Elena looks toward Earth. "We tell them the truth." She opened a galaxy-wide transmission. "This is Commander Elena Ward. Every world listen. We were attacked. We defended ourselves. We defeated the people who attacked us." She paused. "But we will not replace their empire with ours. We will not take their worlds. We will not take their resources. We will not decide who governs another civilization." Her voice became stronger. "We will help build something better." The transmission ended. For several seconds, the galaxy was silent. Then one imperial world responded. "We agree." Another followed. Then another. Within minutes, thousands of worlds began transmitting the same message. Not orders. Not surrender. Agreement. The observer fleet stopped moving. The enormous ships remained suspended among the stars. Then the central vessel opened a communication channel. A figure appeared. It wasn't alien. It wasn't human. It was something neither species had seen before. Its appearance seemed almost impossible to describe. Calm eyes. Silver skin. A simple expression. No uniform. No weapons. It looked directly at Elena. "Your species has chosen." Elena nodded. "What happens now?" The observer answered. "Now we show you what happened to the civilizations that failed." A star appeared behind it. Then another. Then another. The images showed ancient worlds. Massive cities. Beautiful civilizations. All abandoned. Not destroyed. Abandoned? Elena stared. What happened to them? They chose power. The observer showed another world. A civilization had built an enormous empire. Then another. Then another. Every one had eventually collapsed. Not from invasion. From within. The observer continued. Your galaxy has repeated the same cycle for thousands of years. Conquest. Resistance. Revolution. New rulers. New wars. New collapse. Elena looked at the Earth. So what do you want? The observer answered. Nothing. That surprised her. We do not want your territory. We do not want your technology. We do not want your obedience. We want to know whether you can break the cycle. Elena looked at the thousands of worlds waiting for an answer. We'll try. The observer smiled. Trying is insufficient. Elena raised an eyebrow. Then what is enough? Choice. The observer disappeared. The unidentified fleet began leaving. But before it vanished, one final transmission reached Elena. Humanity. She looked up. You have been warned once. Elena smiled faintly. I know. The voice continued. Do not make us warn you twice. The fleet disappeared. The galaxy remained silent. For the first time in centuries, there was no emperor giving orders. No central fleet. No single civilization controlling the future. Just billions of people deciding what came next. But Elena knew the war wasn't over. Because one question remained. Where was Vale? His signal had disappeared. His identity was missing from the Imperial prisoner records. And when Alina searched the coordinates of the hidden crown, she discovered something impossible. The station was empty. Not abandoned. Empty. Every system was still functioning. Every corridor was intact. Every control room was operational. But Vale was gone. Then Alina noticed something on the central console. A small human-style data device. She picked it up. The screen activated. Vale appeared. His face was calm. Almost relieved. If you're watching this, then the Emperor has fallen. Alina stared. But that was never my objective. The recording continued. I knew the Empire could not defeat humanity. I knew the Emperor would destroy himself. And I knew the observers would eventually come. Alina's expression hardened. You knew? Vale continued. I needed humanity to become strong enough to survive them. Alina stepped closer to the screen. What are you? Vale smiled. Then he said something that changed everything. I am not an Imperial Admiral. The recording ended. The screen went black. Alina stood frozen. Her deputy whispered. Then who is he? Before she could answer, every sensor on Earth activated simultaneously. Something was approaching. Not from the Empire. Not from outside the galaxy. From beneath Earth itself. A signal. Ancient. Human. And impossibly powerful. Alina looks toward the planet. The ground beneath Earth's oldest continent began glowing. A hidden structure was waking up. Something humanity had built long before the Empire ever found them. And suddenly, Alina understood the final truth. The Empire had not discovered humanity. Humanity had been waiting for someone to discover them. The ground beneath Earth began to glow. Not with fire. Not with explosions. With light. Across the planet, ancient structures buried beneath mountains, oceans, deserts, and cities awakened simultaneously. Alina watched the global map change. Thousands of signals appeared. Then millions. Her deputy stared at the display. Those structures are everywhere. Alina nodded. How old? The chief archaeologist checked the data. Then checked it again. Impossible. What? These structures are older than human civilization. The room went silent. Alina looked at the map. By how much? The archaeologist swallowed. Approximately 12,000 years. Nobody spoke. Humanity had believed it had invented its own space age. It hadn't. Something had been waiting beneath Earth long before the first human city. Alina opened a global channel. Activate the oldest structure. The response came immediately. We don't know which one is oldest. Alina looked at the map. Every signal was synchronized. Then one location began pulsing brighter than the others. Antarctica. A massive circular structure was rising beneath the ice. Alina stared. Send a team. Her deputy shook his head. Commander, we don't know what it is. Neither do I. She looks toward the window. That's why we're going. 2 hours later, Alina stood inside the structure. The chamber was enormous. Smooth walls curved upward into darkness. There were no human symbols. No machines resembling modern technology. No weapons. Only a circular platform in the center. Alina stepped onto it. The room activated. A beam of light rose around her. Then a figure appeared. Human. A woman. She looked remarkably ordinary. No armor. No military uniform. Just simple clothing and tired eyes. Alina stared. Who are you? The woman smiled. My name is Marta. Who built this place? Mara looked around. We did. Alina's heart stopped. When? Before your civilization remembers. The hologram changed. Earth appeared. But it looked different. The continents were familiar. The oceans were familiar. But the planet was surrounded by enormous structures. Human spacecraft filled orbit. Thousands of them. Millions. Elena whispered. We had this. Mara nodded. You had more. The images change. Humanity spreading across nearby star systems. Building colonies. Exploring distant worlds. Creating enormous scientific stations. Then the image changed again. A human fleet appeared. It wasn't fighting. It was traveling. Beyond the galaxy. Elena stared. Where were they going? Mara answered. Everywhere. The image changed again. A group of human scientists stood before an enormous alien structure. The same symbol appeared. The symbol of the observers. Elena felt her stomach tighten. We met them. Yes. What happened? Mara looked directly at her. We failed their test. Elena froze. The chamber became silent. Explain. Mara continued. They offered humanity access to technologies beyond anything we had imagined. Unlimited energy. Faster travel. Control over matter. Knowledge of distant civilizations. Elena looked at the ancient fleet. And humanity accepted? Yes. What went wrong? Mara's expression became sad. We became convinced that because we could control something, we had the right to control it. The images changed. Humanity began expanding. Then demanding. Then conquering. Human fleets appeared above alien worlds. Elena watched in silence. We became the Empire. The words hit harder than any weapon. Her deputy whispered. The imperial civilization wasn't the first. No, Mara said. It was an echo. Elena stared at her. Then what happened to us? Mara looked toward the stars. The observers intervened. A massive fleet appeared. Not attacking. Simply surrounding humanity. Mara continued. They didn't destroy us. They gave us a choice. What choice? Leave. Elena frowned. Leave where? Here. Mara pointed toward Earth. They stripped humanity of the technology that allowed interstellar domination. The ancient human fleet disappeared. One by one. The colonies were abandoned. The stations went silent. Humanity returned to Earth. Then the memories were deliberately buried. Elena's eyes widened. We forgot. Yes. Why? Because the observers believed memory would become another form of power. Elena looked at the hologram. So Earth wasn't primitive? No. It was contained. Mara nodded. Humanity was given a second chance. Elena took a breath. And Vale? Mara smiled. He was sent to find out whether you had learned. Elena stared. Vale is human? No. Then what is he? He is one of the observers. The room went silent. Elena remembered his face. His warnings. His knowledge. His impossible access to imperial systems. His mysterious messages. Everything finally made sense. He infiltrated the Empire. Yes. For how long? 300 years. Her deputy stared. 300? Mara nodded. He watched the Empire become what your ancestors once were. Elena looked down. And he watched us. Yes. Why didn't he stop the Empire earlier? Because he was not allowed to. Elena looked up sharply. The observers don't interfere. Correct. Then why contact us? Because you were different. Elena waited. Mara continued. The Empire fought because it wanted control. Humanity fought because it wanted survival. The difference mattered. Elena remembered every decision. The battles they avoided. The civilians they rescued. The worlds they refused to conquer. The power they could have taken. The empire they could have inherited. And the choice they had made instead. Mara smiled. You passed. The chamber became brighter. The ancient structures across Earth responded. A network activated beneath the planet. Elena stepped backward. What is happening? Your second chance is complete. What does that mean? Mara disappeared. Then the voice of the observers filled the chamber. Humanity. Elena looked upward. You have remembered. The voice continued. You have seen what you once became. The chamber walls opened. Earth appeared beneath them. Beautiful. Blue. Alive. You now possess the ability to reclaim what was taken from you. Elena stared. Everything? Everything. The technology. The ships. The energy systems. The ancient knowledge. All of it. Humanity could become the most powerful civilization in the galaxy again. But the observers weren't finished. And you must choose. Elena understood. This was the real test. Not whether humanity could defeat an empire. Whether humanity could possess power without becoming one. She looked at her deputy. He already knew what she was thinking. You're going to refuse? Elena smiled. No. She looked toward the ancient controls. We're going to accept. He looked surprised. Accept? Yes. Elena placed her hand on the central interface. We can't learn anything by throwing power away. The system activated. Energy flowed across Earth. Ancient technology returned. But Elena immediately entered a new command. Open access. Her deputy stared. To everyone? To everyone. She looks toward the stars. No civilization gets to control this alone. The ancient system responded. A message appeared. Confirm distribution. Elena pressed yes. Across the galaxy, new knowledge became available. Not weapons. Not military technology. Energy. Medicine. Environmental restoration. Safe faster than light travel. Scientific knowledge. The things that could improve civilizations without making them rulers. The observers watched. Then their leader appeared. The same silver figure Elena had seen before. You understand? Elena nodded. We don't need to own the future. The observer smiled. You have learned. Before Elena could respond, another transmission arrived. From the former imperial capital. The emperor. He had disappeared after the crown failed. Now his face appeared on the screen. He looked defeated. But not angry. I have one question. Elena opened the channel. What? Why? She waited. The emperor continued. You defeated my fleets. You broke my command network. You turned my people against me. You could have taken everything. But you didn't. Elena looked at him. Because that would have made us you. The emperor stared at her. Then he laughed softly. I spent my entire life believing power meant the ability to force others to obey. He looked toward the stars. You have shown me something worse. Elena frowned. What? That power is the ability to choose what you refuse to become. The emperor removed the imperial insignia from his uniform. He placed it on the console. I surrender. Elena shook her head. No. He looked confused. You don't surrender to us. She continued. You answer to your people. For the first time, the emperor smiled. Then perhaps I finally understand. The transmission ended. Months pass. The empire disappeared. Not through conquest. Through transformation. World after world became independent. Former enemies became neighbors. Former soldiers became explorers. Former imperial factories became hospitals. The great military shipyards began building civilian vessels. And Earth became something nobody had expected. Not the capital of the galaxy. Not the center of an empire. A meeting place. A neutral world where civilizations could speak without fear. Elena stood on a balcony overlooking the new galactic assembly. Thousands of species filled the enormous chamber. Human delegates sat beside former imperial representatives. No throne existed. No emperor stood above them. Every world had a seat. Admiral Vale appeared beside Elena. For the first time, he wore no imperial uniform. Only simple gray clothing. You did well, he said. Elena smiled. You were lying to us for 300 years. I was observing. You lied. Vale laughed. Yes. Elena looked at him. Was humanity really your greatest concern? Vale became serious. No. What was? He looks toward Earth. Your greatest danger was always yourselves. Elena nodded. I know. Vale turned to leave. She stopped him. Where are you going? Back to the observers. To report? To recommend something. What? Vale smiled. That humanity be allowed to explore the galaxy again. Elena stared at him. Really? Yes. But without an empire. Especially without an empire. He walked away. Elena remained on the balcony. Below her, thousands of civilizations were speaking, arguing, negotiating, laughing, learning. It wasn't perfect. There would still be wars. There would still be greed. There would still be people who wanted power. Humanity hadn't solved the galaxy. It had simply refused to own it. Then Elena's communications device activated. One final message. From the observers. She opened it. Their leader appeared. Humanity. Yes. You were once the greatest threat in this galaxy. Elena didn't deny it. We know. You were given a second chance. We know. And now? Elena looks toward the stars. Now we want to see what's out there. The observer smiled. Then go. The transmission ended. Across Earth, ancient launch facilities open. Not warships. Exploration vessels. Thousands of them. They rose into the sky. Humanity was returning to the stars. But this time, it wasn't carrying an empire. It was carrying a choice. Elena watched the first fleet disappear into the blue. Her deputy stood beside her. Where do we go first? Elena smiled. Everywhere. He laughed. That's a lot of places. She looked toward the galaxy. We have time. Then a final transmission appeared. A civilization from beyond the known galaxy. They had been watching. They had heard what happened. Their message was simple. We have heard the story of humanity. Elena waited. Should we be afraid? She looked at the countless stars. Then she smiled. No. A pause. Should we trust you? Elena looked at the earth behind her. At the people. The cities. The oceans. The billions of ordinary lives that had survived the war. Then she answered. You don't have to trust us. The alien voice waited. Elena continued. Just don't give us a reason to forget who we are. The transmission ended. The camera pulls away from Earth. The planet becomes smaller. The stars become brighter. The galaxy stretches beyond the horizon. Human exploration ships disappear into the unknown. And somewhere far beyond the edge of known space, the observers watch them go. For the first time in thousands of years, they do not follow. They simply watch. Because humanity has finally learned the lesson every empire before it refused to learn. Strength is not having the power to rule everyone. Strength is having that power. And choosing not to. The Galactic Empire had attacked humanity because it believed humans were weak. It was wrong. Humanity wasn't weak. It had simply forgotten what it once was. And when the galaxy forced humanity to remember, it discovered something far more dangerous than an ancient superweapon. It discovered a species capable of becoming powerful without becoming cruel. A species capable of surviving without conquering. A species capable of holding the entire galaxy in its hands. And opening those hands instead. The final human transmission crossed the stars. 7 words. The same 7 words that had started everything. If you attack us, you will regret it. This time, the galaxy understood. The warning was never a threat. It was a promise. Humanity would defend itself. Humanity would protect those who could not protect themselves. And humanity would never again become the empire it had once been. Because the greatest victory was not reducing the enemy to ashes. It was refusing to become ashes itself.